Hello and welcome everyone to Tech Tuesdays here on Northwest Digital News. Harry Brelsford, as always, joins us live from Miami this time. And Harry, you find yourself down at Acronis. Share with our audience what Acronis is, and then we'll get into some of the event stuff.
Yeah, so Acronis is a cyber software solution company, and they, my friend, are best known in the past for backup. So Acronis Backup, and that's where most people would know them. At one point, they had a package on the shelf, as we like to say, right? You could go to Fry's or Computer City and actually buy the Acronis Backup solution. And I believe you still can. But they changed their business model. They like to joke, backup is dead. Now, that said, they still do backup. But Kevin, the bigger opportunity is cyber security. And it's really a case of additive portfolio additions, both strategic and organic, where Acronis is now really in the cybersecurity business, of which backup is one component, but also just some of the prevention, right? An ounce of prevention's worth a pound of cure. So they've changed their business model, and what you see on the screen is Acronis arguably went out into the wilderness for a little while once backup matured, once software purchases matured. They went out in the wilderness. They raised well over 100 mil from some of the investment banks. I believe it was Goldman. They invested in themselves. They hired a bunch of employees. You know, some of the statistics are there. And so they're coming out the other side reporting significant growth as a result of that investment in changing their business model. Kevin, it's not unlike, in the old days, I'd literally go to Kinko's and use the fax machine to send a fax.
Right.
You can still do it. You can still go to Kinko's and send a fax, but that era has changed, and everybody's got to change their business models accordingly. So that's kind of the story with Acronis. Is they built a reputation for backup, but now they would really want to be called cyber protection, cyber infrastructure protection, and on into predictive analytics to even help predict up front what's coming.
Harry, I was just going to add that if you are at one of the office supply stores and you are faxing something, while you're there, you should also check your pager at the same time.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
We're at the Fontainebleau Hotel, which is a 5-star. It's all that. Unfortunately, it's still a little hot out for someone from the Pacific Northwest. So I'm actually spending my time inside. The humidity and the heat have not completely left, probably will in the next few days. Then Florida becomes very pleasant. But what they've done at the Acronis Global Cyber Summit 2019 is this is their first year. And so they've done a good job. First year conferences, there's always a couple lessons learned, but they have definitely invested into this conference. And it's drawing on it's their partners, so it's people who are already Acronis partners and really want to double click down into the product stack. I'll give you an example. On November 5th, and Kevin, for the life of me, I can't remember if November 5th is the election day. I know it's an off year for elections, but I know we actually have a Tuesday election in November, and I don't have it in front of me, but it's coming up. So November 5th, they're going to release the Acronis Cyber Portfolio version 8, and they have some new additions. They filled some gaps, and this is what people are here for. So they filled some gaps, and for example, they have now added what's called multi-factor authentication. And Kevin, you and I would know that when you go to your bank and you go online to your bank and you log on, they're going to text you a 4-digit or 8-digit number that you have to type in on the web page to complete your authentication.
Sure.
So that's multi-factor. So that's just a couple weeks away, and they own it. They had some gaps and they've engineered the solution. So at the end of the day, this is a combination of a technical conference, of course, and then some notable keynote speakers. So that's actually been a pleasant surprise. Is they brought in some top talent, no question about it.
Well, speaking of top talent, one of them was Robert Herjavec, well-known from Shark Tank. Any insider stuff that you learned about the show Shark Tank from him? I'm just curious.
he told the audience that it's upwards of 7 or 8 hours of film for each contestant. And, you and I are used to seeing the contestants make their pitch on TV in 7 or 8 minutes. And that's what it looks like, that they have to plow through about 7 or 8 hours of film and tighten up the edits. That was one insight. And believe it or not, they actually do not meet the contestants until they walk out on stage for the first time. So that's kind of cool because they want to keep it real. But Kevin, more importantly, what Robert talked about, and I had no idea, but he made his millions in cybersecurity in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And, he runs a successful business to this day. The entity hasn't sold or anything. And obviously that's funded his lifestyle, right?
Sure.
To be on Shark Tank and so on. But he's a technical person. So he was able to double click down into the product stack and talk about cybersecurity. And so, basically he was able to hang with us. And
Right.
For being a Hollywood star, I was impressed. That was the main thrust of his speech, but he's engaging, he's humble, he's self-made. It was a pleasure to see him, and, he's not phony, right?
Mm-hmm.
You always kind of worry about that when you see people on TV. Hey, final comment on Robert. When they asked him, when he was interviewing to be a host on Shark Tank, he said, they said, "Why do you want to be on Shark Tank?" And he said, "Because I want to become famous so I can be on Dancing with the Stars." And he had a photo, and he was. He leveraged Shark Tank to be on Dancing with the Stars. And apparently that was the kind of answer that they wanted. So that was cool.
Nice.
So
Nice.
now you know what I know about Robert, but really, really good guy.
Yeah, that's actually, interestingly enough, I understand completely what you're saying, that the on-camera persona may not necessarily be the person behind the scenes, but I have always enjoyed his perspective on a lot of these different business dealings that have been presented on Shark Tank. So, good to hear. So let's talk about the Formula One car that is at the event and the purpose for this vehicle being there.
Yeah, I actually just got out of a press conference a little while ago with the Formula One team. Williams Group owns the car. They're active worldwide racing. This right here, quite frankly, is a mock-up. So this is not a Formula One car, but it's a costume car for trade shows. But Acronis is a brand sponsor. And in the press conference a little while ago, what they talked about was that essentially by sponsoring the Formula One car racing team and providing the cybersecurity solutions, first of all, that's a high-profile target, right? Sports teams would be a target because any hacker would want to be known for, maybe hacking the Boston Red Sox, right? That kind of thing. So they're a target. Number one, they're a target. Number two, they have proprietary data that is critical to their success, right? That it's competitive. So the cars, have to be tweaked and this and that. So that data is proprietary. And then number three, and this was interesting, is that the Formula One motion, for lack of a better word, provides a test bed for Acronis to improve its data, to improve its behavior, to improve what it does. And the comment in the press conference last hour was, what they found is there's nothing like using a pro sports team. Take your industry, baseball would be an example, with all the statistics and all the information they generate in baseball. So there's nothing like using a pro sports team as a test bed to build your product, right? It's not just a simple SMB slow-moving law firm. Let me put it that way. So that, like I say, the car itself is eye candy, but the story behind the car is pretty cool.
Well,
So
talking about
that's
story
gonna get
behind
out of the
things, let's visit a little bit about the Acronis Foundation and the connection with building schools that they have with the organization.
Yeah, so what the Acronis Foundation is I would call this a combination. At the end of the day, it's cause marketing. That what they're doing is they're doing goodness, and they are. I mean, they're helping these kids you see on the screen, in overseas countries and third world countries, go to school. And there's some stats up on the screen about that. But Kevin, it's also a highly effective marketing approach. I've seen it back in the Seattle area with the guy who's the dancing man with the mattresses and the animated characters on TV. He's always on TV trying to sell you a mattress. And he, while his commercials are real and authentic and silly, but he's also a big community supporter of, the little yellow duck race where you buy the yellow duck for a boat or a buck.
Yes.
It goes down the stream. You know what I'm talking about, those community fundraisers. And in the case of the dancing mattress man, I think that served his cause well. And, I would say Acronis gets some leverage. Bottom line on the Acronis Foundation is they're doing the right thing. They had a fundraiser last night, so the attendees had skin in the game and threw in, I think everybody threw in $50 or $100 to support a good cause. It's okay. It's all right. My only complaint would have been that they only had beer and wine, and this is actually a company that has Russian roots, and so you would expect vodka, right? Because Russia, vodka, right? We would be toasting vodka, Russia. And quite frankly, Kevin, in the charity auction business, there is a formula to liquor up the attendees to get them to spend more and buy live animals, right? Go home with a puppy.
Well,
they didn't do that. It was far more. Go ahead.
You mentioned Russia and vodka, and this is a great segue to have you visit about Eric O'Neill, the FBI agent.
Yeah, so Eric O'Neill's the FBI agent, late 90s, early 2000s, who captured the notorious Robert Hansen, right? Excuse me, the spy of spies. And you and I have talked about Eric O'Neill in the past. I believe he was at the SAGE Summit down in Atlanta. SolarWinds Empower down in Atlanta. But see how I am? I think he's probably been at SAGE. He's been at SolarWinds. Now he's up here at Acronis. So he's doing the circuit. These guys typically hit the road for a year and do the circuit. As you can see, quite engaging, just from the photo, right? He's a smart guy. And, just a shout out to him would be that what he did resulted in a movie. So folks, click over to Netflix, put this on your weekend watch list for The Breach, starring Ryan Phillippe as O'Neill. So that's again another shout out to Robert O'Neill. And I think that's pretty much my take here at the Acronis Global Cyber Summit.
Well, I do have one more question. I do have one more question for you before you go. I'm always asking you if you're staying out of trouble. Well, this next photo here, if we'll bring this up, the photo with you with the police officers. Explain this shot.
Well, I'll tell you, Florida is known for recovery movement rehab centers, and maybe I'm going to have to find myself in one of those because I keep getting in trouble. As you can see here, I'm surrounded by Miami-Dade County police. These are real police. On the trade show floor. Now we're having a little bit of fun. I don't want this to get on CNN as, one of those mistakes, right?
Yes.
And by the way, they talked about that. They would only go so far with a photo because they don't want to be on CNN. But I'll tell you, law enforcement at a conference, they're there in good cheer. And quite frankly, the caliber of the hotel we're at and just the nature of Miami Beach, quite frankly, it justifies. It justifies additional security in this day and age. But yeah, we're having too much fun. I made bail, and the judge is probably going to order me to go to rehab. But aside from that minor point,
the only advice I'd have for the Miami-Dade is you need to send bigger police officers. This guy's behind me in the photo. That is one big dude there.
Yeah, exactly. One of my readers commented on that photo. I put it up on Twitter, and one of the readers commented that the two, with with all due respect, but the two police officers make me look thin. So I was like, amen, brother.
There you go. You know how to pick your company. All right, thanks everyone who joined us here on the broadcast, this live update from Acronis. Thanks to Harry Brelsford from SMB Nation for joining us, and we'll look forward to chatting with you next time. I'm Kevin Hunter here on Northwest Digital News. Till next time, take care.